welcome back to our next episode of the Hormone Café. Today we're going to talk about some mental health things that we can do in order to be happy in the journey. Something that's extremely hard if we're trying to get pregnant and we've been doing all these things and we're still not able to get pregnant, or we're in perimenopause or menopause and we don't feel that great and we're having this crazy irregular bleeding all the time, or we have PCOS and we haven't had a period in 2 years. All of those things that are going on with our health can be really, really chronically frustrating, where there's always this little nagging thing in the back of our mind that something is wrong with me, something is going on. And it's really important for us to have mental strategies to be happy in the journey and to figure out how to be happy where we are and not have necessarily our happiness depend on our health. We need to find ways to be happy no matter what our health circumstances are and be happy in the journey on the way to healing. Because it's really easy to say, oh, if I can just get pregnant, then I'll be happy. If I finally see that positive pregnancy test, then I'll be happy. But the problem is, if you're not happy now, you're not going to be happy when you're pregnant, because the fertility journey is really, really hard. And then also the pregnancy journey is really, really, really hard. So if you are a person who is really anxious when you're in the fertility journey, you're also going to be really anxious when you're pregnant, because when you're pregnant, it's very, very scary. We don't want to have a miscarriage. We're afraid to eat this. We're afraid to do that. And then labor is super scary. And postpartum is really, really hard, because now we're trying to keep this little person alive. So in our journey, in our healing journey, in our fertility journey, it's really important that we look inside and we figure out, okay, what is it that makes me happy? How can I be happy now, in this moment, in this time, in this day, in this month, without relying on 100% perfect health or pregnancy or perfect periods in order to make myself happy? So it's important that we take the time and we look inside ourselves, and we always make ourselves have a better mindset, more positive thoughts, moving forward in life, improving ourselves, reaching out, helping others, so that our happiness doesn't depend just on our health or just on our ability or inability to get pregnant. Something that can be really helpful, for example, is to have a gratitude journal. Sometimes when things are going wrong, it really feels like you feel like crap. Everything's going wrong. It can be helpful to kind of reflect on the good things that are going on in our life. I have a journal and I absolutely love it. I use it to write down my thoughts, my goals, just little things that come to my head. And it's helpful for me to go back and read through the things and remember, how was I doing? What was going well? What wasn't going well? And so it's helpful to have a gratitude journal. Every single night you want to write down 3 things that you're grateful for daily. Another thing that I think helps is to write down wins, like 3 great things that happened that day and things that didn't go that well, because it's helpful in our journey to always make sure that we're bettering ourselves and always trying to be a better person. So you want to write down things maybe that didn't go so well that you can improve in the future, because we never want to come out of our journey like we never want to. At the end of the journey, you don't want to be a worse, less healthy person. You always want to be a healthier, better, happier person. So you want to make sure that everything that you're doing, we're also focusing on your mental health, because sometimes it's really easy to think, okay, I got to get my blood drawn, then I got to do this lab, then I have to do this procedure, and we're checking the boxes. And along the way, we're checking the boxes, but we're not truly, actually making ourselves healthier. And sometimes, I'll give you a lot of homework, like you have to eat this much protein. I don't want you to be eating sugar. So maybe we're doing well from a dietary standpoint, but there's some mental health things that we haven't quite mastered, or we still find ourselves complaining a lot, or we're blaming other people for our circumstances. So it's important to do a little thought audit, right? What are you thinking about during the day? Are your thoughts positive? Are they negative? Are they helping you be a more whole, better, happier person? Or are they making you worse, right? Are they making you feel bitter? Are they making you feel discouraged? So write down what's going well in your life. Write down what's not going well. Write down some of the positive thoughts that are guiding you. Write down some of the negative thoughts that are guiding you. And you want to think about, okay, how do I translate these negative thoughts into positive thoughts? So I'm always moving myself into being a better person. Number two is that you always want to use your journey as an opportunity, not just to be a better person, but to be better in our relationships, right? So we want to be a better wife, a better mom, a better friend, because sometimes it can be very isolating and you're doing a lot of stuff and you're doing a lot of stuff for yourself, but you want to make sure that our relationships don't suffer, because it's very, very important in this time of our healing, when we're trying to get pregnant, when we're trying to get our period back, when we're trying to heal our PCOS, that we have a village and we don't want to abandon everyone around us. So sometimes it can be helpful to do a little audit, right? Like, am I being the best wife that I can be, right? If you're struggling with secondary infertility, maybe am I still being the best possible mom that I am for my kid or my kiddos? Am I being the best friend that I can possibly be? And I think sometimes in that, it helps to write down your goals and set really specific goals. For example, have girls' night once a month with best friend, or in our family, we call it buddy time, when we have time with our kids, just me and them, or just my husband and them. So maybe you have one buddy night once a week where you and your kiddo just spend time together. And then it also helps to schedule date nights with your husband. Okay, like every Thursday, we're not going to do work. We're just going to have date night with our husbands or our boyfriends, spouses, partners, because you want to make sure that in the journey, it can be really isolating. And we want to make sure that we still continue to strengthen our relationships and we lean on those people around us. And we use that also to make ourselves healthier. Because sometimes being able to talk to a girlfriend on wine night, every first Tuesday of the month can be very therapeutic and very helpful. And you're not in this alone. And it can be helpful to talk about it with other people. So we want to make sure that we are always bettering ourselves, and then we're using it as an opportunity to make our relationships better and never worse. Also, it's helpful to set goals, because sometimes our number one goal and focus is just, okay, I gotta eat this and get my period back and become pregnant. But in that, think about, is there anything else that you want to do, right? Like, do you want to run a marathon? Do you want to start a podcast? Is there a book that you've always been wanting to read? In that whole journey of literally making yourself a better person, think about all the things that you've thought that you might want to do, right? Do you want to write that one paper, that kind of a thing, and then write them down. I had a patient who she'd always wanted to run a marathon, and she'd never run a marathon before. She wasn't a runner, and she ended up at the end and training for the New York Marathon. And then she ended up getting pregnant, and then she ended up having a miscarriage, and she ran the marathon. And she said, oh my gosh, it was so healthy for me in that process to have something to look forward to and have something to do and have something to motivate me and make me a better person and make me healthier, because that miscarriage was really, really hard and it was super rough. And it just felt like this tremendous sense of loss. But in that, I was able to find hope in that I was making myself a better person. And then she was able to get pregnant again. And now she's going on to have a beautiful and wonderful pregnancy. So if there's something that you've always wanted to do, use this journey of your health and your healing, write a goal down, have an accountability buddy, right? Like put it on social media or text your friends, or have somebody who's going to hold you to your goal, or maybe run a marathon with you, or maybe co-author a book with you, or co-host a podcast with you, or, start an Instagram that you've always wanted to start, that kind of a thing. Like, make sure that you are meeting your goals and do something that you've always wanted to do. So even in the midst of grief and loss and trauma, we have something that's motivating us and making us better and making us healthier. The last thing is that it's really important that we come to our health journey without fear. We want to use the things that we're doing to be empowered and not to be afraid. Okay. So we don't want to be afraid. We want to be empowered. I have a lot of people, for example, who come to me and they're like, oh, I really don't want to have that biopsy because I'm really afraid that you're going to find something bad. And then you're going to tell me that something is wrong with me. And so okay, you don't want to be afraid. You want to use it to be empowered. For example, I had a patient and she really didn't want to have a biopsy and she was terrified. And she said, well, what if you find something bad? And I said, well, the thing about finding something is that now you know, right? Now you have an answer. Now we have something to work toward. Now we have a door that's open. We have a clear pathway. So we did a biopsy on her and she ended up having endometritis. And she was super upset because now she has an infection in her uterus. And I said, the great thing is the silver lining is that luckily endometritis is treatable and we can test and make sure that it's gone. So we did a round of antibiotics and then we did a test. We made sure that it was gone. And this is a patient who had had multiple miscarriages before. And she was terrified that we were going to find that something was wrong. And I said, let's not focus on the fear. Let's focus on learning about your body. What's going on with your body? What does it need, right? So she had this infection for a long time in her uterus. And when she took her antibiotics, she said, oh my gosh, Sarah, I have always had this dull feeling in my uterus. And I thought that it was kind of normal after having a couple of miscarriages. And I realized that those were the symptoms of having an infection. Because now that I've had the antibiotics, that weird kind of dull, heavy sensation in my uterus is completely gone. And I feel way better. And I actually have more energy. Because if your body is not constantly trying to fight inflammation, then it can give you a lot more energy. So she ended up having the antibiotics and then she got pregnant. And she said, you know what, Sarah? All these other times that I got pregnant, I was so afraid because I was just terrified it was going to end up in miscarriage. And then it did end up in miscarriage. But this process of learning about my body, figuring out what's going on, healing my body, taking antibiotics, now I'm pregnant and I'm not afraid because I know that we healed what I needed to heal. And I think that infection that we treated was a huge part of my miscarriages. So now that's healed. And I took antibiotics and we did a repeat biopsy and we found that it was negative. I'm able to get pregnant and I have a sense of peace that everything's going to go great because we treated this. And now she's in her second trimester and she's feeling great. And she is just having a lot of peace from that. So in our journey of learning, there can be so many things that we have to do, right? What if we have an ultrasound and we find that we have ovarian cysts? But the thing is that more information, sometimes it can be really, really overwhelming. I totally understand that. On the flip side, we want to make sure that we have the information that we're truly empowered to learn about and to understand our bodies. I had another patient who hadn't had a period in 2 years. And I had her start doing Mira, where I was having her pee on these strips every single day, and her hormones were just really, really, really low all the time, every single day. Her estrogen never rose, her LH never rose, her progesterone never rose. And she said, Sarah, this is so depressing. Like, I'm just looking at my hormones and they're on the floor and this is depressing and I don't want to do this anymore. And I said, you know what? Now we're learning about your body, right? Now we know exactly what to do. We need to rebuild your hormones because now we have some data. We've learned about your body. We learned that you just have a really, really, really low hormone profile and that your hormones are not high enough in order to trigger an ovulation or have a developing follicle. At the end, don't use it as a way to get depressed about your body. Use it to learn about your body and empower yourself because our number one goal right now needs to be to rebuild your estrogen. So we kind of rehauled her diet. She had had a lot of restrictive eating in the past. And so she was kind of afraid to eat and she was afraid to gain weight. And so she was doing a lot of intermittent fasting. So we had her work on nourishing herself, eating 3 times a day, really balancing out meals in a way where we can get protein and fat and fiber and carbohydrates every single meal. So we worked on that. We had her take some bioidentical estrogen while we were rebuilding her natural estrogen levels. And then she could start seeing her estrogen go up on her Mira. And it was exciting because before it was just looking really low and really flat. And she found a way to exercise that was much more fitting for her body because when she was exercising, she was lifting a lot of weights for a very long period of time, like lifting hard weights for many, many hours. And we learned that that was just too stressful on her body. And that combined with the intermittent fasting was just causing her body to constantly be in an energy deficit and kind of be in fight or flight mode. So she still lifts weights. She just does a much more diverse combination of workouts. So she does some yoga, some Pilates, some running, some gentle walking, some weightlifting, and that is way better for her body. So we had her take bioidentical estrogen for 3 months while she was working on getting her exercise a little bit tweaked more towards her body and while she was working on getting herself nourished. And then her estrogen went up on its own. And so we were able to wean her off her bioidentical estrogen. And then she was able to ovulate completely on her own without any other medications. And she said, Sarah, you were right, because I was so depressed about looking at all this data. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, I'm so broken. But the good thing is that now we knew what to do, right? We knew her estrogen was low. So we knew, okay, we need to work on rebuilding your estrogen, right? Like, why is your estrogen low? So sometimes it's totally true. The data can be depressing, and it can be meaning that it can give us a diagnosis. That's kind of a bummer. But the good thing is that that is a key to learning about our bodies. So the most amazing thing is that now she's empowered to always learn about her body and know what to do to manage her hormones forever. So for example, if she has a month where she ovulates a little bit later because she's working out really, really hard, or she's really, really stressed, or she's not sleeping that well, then she knows the next month she's got to back down a little bit, right? She's got to sleep more, be a little bit gentler on her workouts, eat a bigger breakfast, really learn to manage her stress. And that is empowering, because now she knows what to do day in and day out in order to keep her hormones regular. I actually just saw her last week, and I hadn't seen her in 6 months because she didn't need me. She was having regular cycles, and she came to me and she said, yeah, Sarah, I've been doing great. I came to you and I literally hadn't had a period in 2 years. And now in the past 6 months, I've had a 27-day cycle, a 30-day cycle, a 29-day cycle, a 27-day cycle. I'm working out. I'm lifting weights less, but I'm still working out, which supports my mental health. I'm understanding how I need to nourish my body, and I know how to read any red flags if I have a little bit of a late period, if I don't ovulate that month. And I said, oh my gosh, you need to train all of our other patients, because this is exactly what you want to get out of this journey, right? Not that we get some data and we're super afraid of it and we're scared, but we get the data and we're empowered. Okay, this is what we need to work on. This is how we need to tweak it. This is how I need to learn about my body. And so then you come out of it saying, oh yeah, I know how to eat. I know how to exercise. I know how to read the signs of my body. I know when I'm doing well. I know when my body's off. And at the end of the day, the whole goal is that they say, okay, I'm doing great, Dr. P. I don't need you anymore. So if there's a procedure that you need to do, a lab that you need to draw, please don't enter into the process with fear. Don't enter into the process with a mindset of being afraid. You want to enter into the mindset of like, let's learn, let's delve in, and I want you to use that data to empower yourself about your body, right? And there can sometimes be a little bit of grief surrounding that. For example, sometimes I'll have people do a continuous glucose monitor and they'll eat a muffin and their blood sugar will be really high. And they'll say, oh my gosh, Dr. B, this is so depressing. Now I can't eat muffins anymore. And I say, don't use that to be depressing. Use that to empower yourself to learn about your body, right? It's not that you can never eat a muffin, but maybe when you want to have a treat, you have something that doesn't spike your blood sugar as much, right? Maybe some yogurt-covered pretzels, or some high, like full-fat Greek yogurt, or yogurt ice cream where it has some fat and it doesn't have as much sugar, but it still makes you feel like you can eat a treat. And then when you really want to have a muffin, you're going out to coffee with your friend and you want to have a little muffin every once in a while, it's not that big of a deal because most of the time you keep your blood sugar pretty stable and steady. So if you get some data, you get a test back and it's kind of bad news, don't be afraid of that. Use that as a tool to learn about your body and make it better. So in our journey, to summarize, we just want to make sure that we're always making ourselves better, happier, healthier, and never worse. So it's important to do a little audit, right? What are we thinking about? What's our mood like during the day? Are we bitter? Are we resentful? Are we happy? Are we hopeful? Are we positive? And I think it really helps to write some of those things down, right? Our positive thoughts, our dominant thoughts, because that enables us to look at our data and see how we're doing from just a mental health and a mindset standpoint. I think it really helps to have a gratitude journal. It also helps to write down what went well that day and what didn't go well so that we can always continue bettering ourselves on a day-to-day basis. And then we want to use our journey as an opportunity to better our relationships with other people too, not to isolate ourselves and make ourselves worse. Sometimes, for example, it can be really hard to talk to our friends, especially if our friends are, able to get pregnant easily and not at the end doing all the diet things that we have to be doing. And sometimes it can be hard to connect with our husbands when they don't feel the same things that we feel every single month. And maybe you're going to not connect on those levels and you're not going to talk about fertility or you're not going to talk about loss or miscarriage. And maybe you are. But still, it's very important that we maintain our relationships. We have a healthy relationship with our husbands and our spouses and our partners outside of our fertility journey. So set little goals, make sure you're truly nourishing yourself and your relationships and that you're relying on your team and your village. And then lastly, want to make sure that we don't enter into this process with fear. We want to enter into this process with a mindset of discovery. Let's figure it out. Let's figure out what I need to be doing differently in order to get the results that I want. And we want to be empowered to learn about our bodies. It's really important. We are extremely into mental health here at Better Health and Fertility. It's a huge part of our health and our journeys and our relationships. So if any of these things resonate with you, please come talk to us. I would love to see you and do a hormone audit and see how we can best be helping you in the whole journey and make you be your happiest, healthiest self. Your homework for this week is that I want you to have a gratitude journal. And every single day, I want you to write down 3 wins, things that went well that day, 3 things that you're grateful for, and then things that you want to work on or improve, just so that we can constantly be making ourselves better, happier, healthier people every single day. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the Hormone Café, and we'll see you in our next episode.